take a deep breath, take the higher road. That's what they always say, as if they know the way. They won't take it from me. But don't ever doubt yourself, 'cause life ain't just a dream. You make your own, so kick and scream. The people will act with a never-ending force. You never had the chance, so what you waiting for? The day has come, my friend, 'cause this is war. It's time and this is war.
In the tapestry of history, political activism has been the sturdy thread that has corrected the course of societies, toppled unjust powers, and restored rights to those from whom they were withheld. It is activism that has given us the right to stand here today, to speak, to argue, and to dream of a better future. Yet the journey is far from over. The need for informed, passionate activism has never been more critical than it is in our current political climate, where often the voices of the few aim to drown out the cries of the many. It is here in the fervor of our unity and the clarity of our purpose that we find the true essence of power, power that belongs inherently to the people. This power is not handed to us. It must be claimed through our actions, our voices, and our unyielding spirit. Every rally, every vote, and every campaign are stitches in the vibrant quilt of our republic. They are affirmations of our rights and testimonies of our duties. As we stand on the precipice of change, we must remind ourselves and the world that our activism is not just reaction. It is a proactive movement. It is the embodiment of hope and the architecture of our future. We are not just resisting wrongs, but are constructing the right. Our engagement shapes laws, molds society, and secures justice. You're listening to Nurses Out Loud on America Out Loud Talk Radio. I'm your host, Nurse Kimberly Overton. Before we get started today, I do want to encourage our listeners, if you have questions or comments, or perhaps you want to share your own experiences with what you're seeing on the front lines of healthcare, you can now submit those to us by emailing them directly to nurses@americaoutloud.com. We would love to hear from you. We encourage all of you to engage in the battle and find your voice in this fight. But until you are able to do that, we will continue to be that voice for you. Joining me today is Donna DeSopo. Donna is an award-winning pharmaceutical healthcare copywriter. She's a marketing communication strategist with over 22 years of experience. She is also a managing partner for SYNCOLOGY Music, a one-stop music licensing company based in the Nashville area. Donna plays a key role in strategic development and music execution with her business partner. Together, they create fresh, precise, high-quality tracks that elevate the storytelling experience. But perhaps even more critical is her role as a citizen activist. Donna has played an active role in both local and national politics for more than 15 years. Donna, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Kimberly. I really love your introduction. It is so inspiring, and it practically moved me to tears listening to you.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I always try to give a little bit of, intro into the topic where we're going to be discussing, and, just my personal feelings on it. And, I consider myself a patriot, and I know you do as well. And just disclaimer, I know Donna. Donna's a friend. Mm-hmm. Donna lives here in the greater Nashville area, as do I. So I've known Donna. How long have we known each other now?
Oh gosh, probably about 6 years ago. Did we?
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. Mm-hmm. We've been very active in the local political scene together. So when I tell you that this woman is a force to be reckoned with, you better believe it. And you'll see what I'm talking about here as we move on through our discussion. But Donna, if you would, just give me a little bit of background on how you got involved in politics.
I always voted. I call myself a religious voter. And I always thought, well, that's all you really can do to affect change or to be involved in the political tapestry that you spoke about. But what had happened to me, and this was the impetus of me becoming a citizen activist, is that I moved here from the state of New Jersey, and I didn't buy a house until I got here. This is my first home. And unfortunately, like, it was during a time where some of the homes were, the market was shifting. And what happened was I was one of only two properties that were left when the builder developer was going bankrupt. Didn't know that this was an HOA. We didn't get some of the proper documentations back then. I moved here after 9/11 and purchased the home in 2002. So I got here October 2001 and purchased the house here in 2002. And I loved Hendersonville. It was a nice, sleepy bedroom community. And everyone said, settle into here because this is a nice place to be. So I did. I invested here. And it was unfortunate because we kind of languished here for about a year and a half. And then we were taken on by another builder developer. And what was happening is that as this development expanded out and finishing off its phase one and into phase two, we were getting more growth. And so our homes were getting broken into, our cars were getting broken into. And what we lacked was a basic infrastructure, which I ultimately found out when you are in the city limits, you get what they call plans of services. And we did not have streetlights, which is really imperative from a safety perspective and, how you're going to see the street signs. And so we didn't have any streetlights, which planner's terminology I learned was adequate light. So when our cars were getting broken into and our homes were getting broken into, I actually reached out to our then 45th state representative. Her name's Deborah Maggart. And I said, Deborah, we met and you said to me, if I ever need your help, to reach out to you. And I'm really reaching out to you because we're having a tough go here in our subdivision. I explained that we had, our cars are getting broken into in our homes as well. And so she had asked me who the developer was. And, this is, a verbatim quote. And I said, well, it's David Lucky from Southeastern. And she said, I know David Lucky. We're good friends. He's been very supportive of my campaign. What do you want me to do about it? Go get yourself a lawyer. And that was a moment of like a jaw-dropping moment, because within one complete thought, she basically said to me, I don't work for the citizenry. I work for special interests.
Right. As we find most of our politicians do.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, they may start off as really good people. And it's unfortunate. That's why we have to be due diligent. In our state constitution, we are to instruct our elected officials. And that's exactly what I was trying to do. And I had to do an awful lot of research because you get the runaround and you get worn out. And then you start to dig for intelligence. And, thankfully, I was in a pharmaceutical, heavily regulated environment. So the first thing I'm looking for is data and would be the evidence and the reasons to understand, well, why is this even happening? I had streetlights in a little tiny town called Pompton Lakes where I grew up. And here it's dark and it's, you're getting a rash of crime. And data show that when you have adequate light, there's a reduction in crime. And that's precisely why when you're in the city limits, you're going to get these plans of services as part of your taxation. So now you're getting taxation without the representation. So as I went down this journey of trying to figure out the hows and the whys, you'll find that the same individuals and the special interests are now investing in certain people on board seats. And then you start to hear from a city attorney that laughingly says, well, 7 votes will get you anything. So strategically, your special interest people vis-a-vis developers, because what are they going to try to do? Rezone. They're going to try to get favor. And through now I'm going to support your campaign and, wink, wink, I get you in this seat. Now I need a favor. And the favor being like potentially like a rezoning dynamic or something to that effect. And so as I went down into this journey, I started to figure out the whys and the hows. And when you start to follow the money, the picture gets much clearer. And I'm talking going into the tentacles of where you could possibly get resolved. So if I couldn't get it locally with the mayor at the time, which was Scott Foster, I always do things according to protocol. I will go from where I need to go to, and if I can't get resolved, escalate. And so you have to navigate bureaucracies if you do not get what you're supposed to be getting once you know the information and you have the actual evidence to prove. When you have a subdivision, you have what is called a surety bond. And we had $100,000 surety bond. That's another piece of data that I acquired. And the surety bond is there to ensure that if the developer does leave and doesn't do the work on a punch list, then the city will now do the work that's there. So I went throughout our subdivision, and we have 81 homes here, and I had 72 signatures. And I religiously would go every other week on Tuesday night, have my 5 minutes at the BOMA meeting at Citizens Commons, and I would really basically educate and then really implore the elected officials that this needed to be done. It has not been done. Here we do not release the surety bond, but sure enough, that mayor released 80% of the surety bond, and we did not get our lights. Then he released the 20%, even though that's a glaring omission of a plan of service that you are paying for. So it took me literally 5 years to get the $56,000 worth of street lighting that should have been here to begin with. And that was a long, hard road. And in the interim, what will happen is that you're painted as crazy. Oh, she doesn't know what she's talking about. But over time, what will happen is you box people in with indisputable evidence, data, evidence, laws, things of that nature. Chapter 1101 state law even says that you shall not further annex until all plans of services are provided. And there is a criterion of what needs to be provided. So why didn't my state representative even move forward? Because I know there's sometimes the city has their jurisdiction, state does as well, but people are influencers to say, hey, you shouldn't be doing this. This is not good. But there is a tyranny that can exist in your own backyard. And I would articulate that. And, you as a nurse and the other nurses were undergoing a tyranny that no one would ever expect. You never expect these things. You have a belief system and a construct that says we will want to believe that our elected officials are working for us. We want to believe that they follow the letters of the law and protocols and guidelines. And what you will find is that there are other agendas, other people that are being served that is not the citizenry, which was an oath. So what does an oath mean? Well, it can be meaningless. And unfortunately, the longer that the elected officials will stay, it's very difficult because then you can go wayward and there's so much pressures. And then you start to say, look, we have term limits. It's at the ballot box. But then you start to examine, well, why are incumbents so difficult to overcome and get somebody new in? Well, if you look at the statistical data sets on political elections, you're going to find that these incumbents will garnish 30-something% of the vote. They have a fan base. It's like a fan club. It's like an artist that has a fan base. These people will always vote for that person because they're my friend. I like them, but they're not digging into how are they voting on policies, and are these policies that they're voting on and how they vote eroding your liberty?
Right. I mean, just our recent election with Senator Farrell Hale is a perfect example of that.
Yes.
How I don't pull any punches with him. He's a terrible leader. The way that he votes, he claims to be conservative. None of his votes reflect my version of conservatism. But yet he keeps on getting voted in time after time after time because, I like him. I go to church with him. And nobody's really digging in and doing their due diligence on how these people are voting.
Yeah. And I think sometimes, I find that initially you might not know what questions to ask. It can be very difficult when you're thrusted in, especially if you have a strong sense of justice and what's right, and you know what's right and what's wrong. And then you're starting to say, gosh, where do I begin? How do I navigate this? I go here, and then nope, that's not working. You're hitting a wall. So then you're going to go here, and you're hitting another wall. So as you go through this process, you're starting to get enlightened, and then you start to figure out, okay, I have to navigate many layers in this bureaucratic dynamic. And as government grows, then the tentacles that you're trying to weave through and get answers and get resolved become far more cumbersome. And the interesting thing is people don't really know their local government. They're very attentive because, again, the big microphone and the TV, and I call it the free stations. It's controlled media, controlled messaging, and people are glued to that. Whereas they don't even know what an alderman is. They don't know their own infrastructure of government locally. They don't know who their alderman is. They don't understand that they can go to the town halls and redress government. And these are things that I was learning too along the way. And we have far more power than we can ever imagine. And we've really forgotten our power, I think.
I think that's true. And when we become outspoken, you alluded to this earlier, when we are outspoken and we are out there kind of, doing a little rabble rousing, we don't make many friends. You get gaslit. They will paint a certain picture of you and try to make you appear that you're crazy. Or, I can't even go out in this community after what I've done, speaking out so loudly about the vaccines and about what's happening inside these hospitals, because when you think about it, the hospital systems, HCA, all of these big, large hospital corporations, they really embed themselves into our communities, don't they? I'm pretty sure that they are the Chamber of Commerce. They pretty much are the Chamber of Commerce at this point. They sit on the board. There's all these types of incestuous relationships. And it's really difficult. So here I am saying, well, they're murdering people in hospitals. The hospital, yes, right here in this community. So I can't, to this day, I can't even go out to eat in this community without people looking at me like I'm the damn Antichrist. I swear, it just happened yesterday. I was I can't, it's awful. I get some support in the community, but I get a lot of, pushback, sideways looks. And,
it's funny because you mentioned about your jobs. What was happening because the tyranny, again, they literally, some of these people, the mayor et al., and they would make phone calls to people's businesses. It happened to, sadly, David Witt and some other people. David Witt, his issue was the overdevelopment and the drainage. So much water was encroaching into his crawl space that it was making his wife sick. So there's always an impetus, what I call getting off the couch, and government will get involved with you if you're not involved with government. And then there's this aha moment of, I cannot sit this out. So as people have a hard time speaking out because of churches that they go to, and they can be shunned. Even that's happened. I've seen it with other citizen activists that are trying to right really egregious wrongs. They have a fear of also either losing their job or not getting a job. But what was a really good thing for me is that I telecommuted. They couldn't just walk into a company I worked for and went into the offices and said, this girl is a problem and you need to, you don't really want to have her as an employee, do you? Wink, wink, So they couldn't do that because I was telecommuting for ad agencies in the state of New Jersey, and specifically, some of the highest ad agencies in WPP and Interpublic Group, when I was a pharmaceutical copywriter and bringing drugs to market. So I knew under a very heavily regulated environment what you have to have, what a study looks like. And when people that are doing what I call the dog and pony show and fake studies, I knew that wasn't a study. Your ranking system was done by internal people to just get your outcome that you wanted. It's based on nothing. You can't make it as a claim because it's not. So when you have these intelligence, what can happen, I can't remember who was the activist that said it. First, they call you crazy and mad, like they laugh at you, and then they call you crazy, and then you win. Because at the end of the day, God sees the truth but waits. I say that a lot. You'll struggle, you'll suffer, you will get crucified, and you will be called all kinds of names, but you know the truth, and the truth is immutable. You see the evidence, the data, the laws, and yet they're going to willfully breach them. And because you don't have a microphone, especially in a one-paper town, and who's doing the advertising spends are going to be your developers. They're going to be the very people that you cannot write articles about. So who becomes a target? You pesky citizen activists. So even in a one-paper town, a newspaper was saying terrible things about me and a fellow citizen activist. Actually, I'll say his name, Kurt Riley. He created.
Oh, yes. We've had Kurt on the show. My listeners might remember Kurt. We've had Kurt.
Poor guy. I mean, he just spent an entire day in front of an election commission. And again, it is this need to silence pesky citizens that are shining the light on some very terrible things. And if we do not stand our ground, we will lose our republic. And when I was 18, I got a chance to vote, and I love Reagan. If you get to see the movie, it just made me feel so.
Yeah.
I love that.
Go out there. Nostalgic. That man's my hero.
And I really loved, Dennis Quaid. I love him too, and that was a great movie, and it really put me in a space of, yes, every era has its problems, but I think our problems today are far more reaching, with the encroachment of government and the things that have transpired. Like, who would have ever thought that you would not have informed consent with your doctor to make a decision that, yes, I think this is a wise decision for taking this particular therapeutic because the benefit far outweighs the risks. And in the absence of any intelligence on safety, you got your phase 1, 2, and 3 trials, because I helped to launch drugs to market. Podhaler, Nucala. I started with the post-launch of Procrit hip and knee indication. You cannot bring things to market and to say this is safe and effective, and for the claims to be out there that if you take this injection, you will not get this virus and you won't spread it. That's an absolute, and it doesn't exist. And so I was just in a time period of like, I'm living in the upside down. I would say I'm living in the upside down. This is completely void of all the things that I've known, even in my profession, in my 22 years of being in an industry. Pharmaceuticals has its place. I mean, I would love to have more of a preventative approach, nutraceuticals, building your immune system, doing it in a healthy way. But unfortunately, the paradigm has to shift from I want a pill to I want to have a very healthy body, because we have an amazing body, and all of the checks and balances that we have, we're amazingly resilient, but we can also be vulnerable. And it's a paradox of sorts, right? So, to me, that was a very challenging time. And even in my own profession, I was like, how can this even be? And then to have alignment with, industry heads or like the WHO to be echoing things that to me just were, this was inaccurate, purely inaccurate. So that is, we're going through some very troubling times. So our citizen activism has to come forward, because if we don't push back, it could get so much worse. And as Reagan said, we are one generation away of losing this brilliant republic that I believe was divine providence. And our founders, think of the Constitution, that they understood the human condition, that power can corrupt, absolutely. And they had checks and balances. and our First Amendment right of speech, and then our Second Amendment right to bear arms, because they had to overthrow the tyrannical, was happening with England, and the tyranny that was back then. And if we're not careful, it could get far reaching for us. And I think there's strategies and tactics that were employed to really silence the citizenry. It happened locally here when I was trying to get the street lights. We were trying to get under our Freedom of Information Act, FOIA, public records. And Ken Jakes, who I totally love, he's the gadfly. He was also a citizen activist. And because of what he went through with NES and the misappropriation of monies and really digging in, he taught us how to pull public records. It is our right to follow our money. And how is it being used? I didn't even know that until I had that enlightenment. And the public records, and that's actual data. That's your evidence. That's your following of the money. And we uncovered so much waste, abuse, and what in my opinion, based on what I've seen, fraudulent activity from the administration that was in power. And then everything started to be like, oh, now I understand. I understand, because the serving of the citizenry is not in line with the oath and who's being served. And so that was, to me, the aha moments, and that you have access to public records. So what they were doing as a workaround, and it usurped board power, is that the mayor at the time, he was actually breaching FOIA and trying to charge us an exorbitant amount of money to get copies of public records. We weren't allowed to take pictures, of the actual record. Instead, you have these, phones now. You don't need to go through the slog of, may I get a copy? I can make copy. They had people watching and overseeing, wanting to know what we were pulling, because it would cue them to know what we were digging into. Now, if you have nothing to hide, then why would you care? So it took me working with Kirk Clements to file with the state that this was a breach of our freedom of information, and that they couldn't charge all of this money and keep us from seeing the records. So in order to get public records expeditiously, you can't make a large public request. You have to make it in small doses, per se, like little increments, like, please provide for my inspection and review the expenditures of the mayor in the month of January, rather than saying 2 years of expenditures. You see, it's too long. So they'll say, I can't meet this in 7 days, and they can slow walk it. See, there's a lot of workarounds. I was told that for every law, there's a workaround. And we're finding that happening too. Workarounds that are eroding your liberty. And so I learned way too much, and it was sad, and it's disheartening. And, you can only hold back that dam that's about to break for so long. You need more citizen activists. And there's a very few that will go and do that, because it is so difficult. You are going to get some repercussions and pullback, as you mentioned as well. Like, I had some actually interesting things happen. Like, I'll be at a Kohl's, or I was at a Publix, which of course I love Publix, one of my favorite places. I know you. You're the one that speaks. Keep doing it. Thank you so much. You're speaking.
Yes, I get that too. And those are always, they're so nice, and they're so encouraging when you do. And it's what kind of makes it all worth it, right?
Yes. Yes.
You can have all of these negative experiences, but I've had people, actually just today that happened to me. Somebody recognized me, and they were like, just keep doing what you're doing, and thank you so much for everything that you do, and for speaking out, and for speaking for those of us who can't. And it's those moments, even though they are fewer and further between, though, it's those moments that make it all worth it.
That totally is, because if one is saying, that's really indicative of a lot more.
Yeah.
Because people, government, if you fear the government, then you have tyranny. But when the government fears the people, because the power, as you said, We, the people, are the ones with the power.
Yep.
They are public
100%.
servants, you know. And so if you don't push back and you don't engage in the town halls, and sadly, people, you know, shuttered into their homes and watch television when they really, at back before the television came out, what did people do? They went to the town hall meetings. It was a social time. And then people were far more, I believe, maybe engaged because the distraction of television and staying in the house and not engaging with your elected officials who could be passing some pretty, you know, not so good things in the middle of the night when you're not there, you know. So it is a matter of our duty. It's a civic duty of ours to do so. Yeah. So
well, we're coming up on a break, but when we come back, I do want to talk more about how we can get people to rise up and do what you're doing, do what I'm doing, do it, you know, so too few are picking up, but we've got to be able to inspire and encourage others to join us. And we'll talk about that here after the break.
Great. Thank you, Ann.
America Out Loud Talk Radio plays on the iHeartRadio network. You can also listen on our media player from any web browser anywhere in the world. We have the best in-class apps available on Apple, Android, or Alexa 24/7. Great talk radio. All of our shows go to podcast the following day. You can hear them on apps such as Spotify, Stitcher, Pandora, iHeart Podcasts, and many more. Be sure to subscribe and rate the show on Apple Podcasts for me. Don't forget to check out our online store at americaoutloud.shop, where you can find all of the products that we represent on our network at a discounted rate, including an incredible line of products from Chemical Free Body. Unlike the majority of supplements you'll find on the market today, with Chemical Free Body, you won't have to worry about harmful ingredients, binders, fillers, or flow agents. Their ultra-safe breakthrough nanosilver technology destroys pathogens, balances the microbiome, and boosts immunity. All of these products are proudly made in the USA and are backed by an unheard of double your money back guarantee. I've made a twice daily Green 85 drink part of my routine, which has led to a decrease in belly bloat and an increase in my energy throughout the day. Use promo code OUTLOUD to save 20% off the Healthy Gut Bundle. I'll catch you on the other side of this break. Stay with us.
It's time and this is what.
During COVID, we got educated on the power of natural virus protection and immune boosting using vitamins A, C, D, zinc, and quercetin. The problem? Getting them at the right dosage from truly natural sources that doesn't cost an arm and a leg. Enter the Daily V-Stack. Using breakthrough cellular absorption technology, we put those vitamins together and supercharge them with a complete multi-mineral complex. The Daily V-Stack is basically an oral IV of 6 products, all in one at an affordable price. Go to chemicalfreebody.com/outloud today. Get the Daily V-Stack, protect yourself, boost your immune system, and save 20% on your first order.
Be prepared for the next pandemic with the Contagion Emergency Kit, created by Dr. Peter McCullough, Chief Scientific Officer at the Wellness Company. The kit contains essential medications you need to stay safe. It includes life-saving, low-supply medications that were previously withheld: ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, generic Z-Pak, generic Tamiflu, budesonide, and a free nebulizer. A guidebook is included for safe use in emergencies. At time of purchase, complete a quick intake form. Don't worry, if you use any of the medications, they can be replenished within 2 years. Stay ahead of future emergencies with confidence. Order your Contagion Emergency Kit today by going to twc.health/outloud and use code OUTLOUD for $65 off your first order plus free shipping.
Expert opinions, honest debate, and in-depth investigations are what you've come to expect from AmericaOutloud.news. We don't shy away from speaking the truth boldly and plainly. All that's missing is the propaganda that has infected legacy and social media. Get the best of down and dirty, wholesome American speak. Now is our time, my fellow Americans. America Out Loud Talk Radio. Liberty and justice for all.
Welcome back to Nurses Out Loud on America Out Loud Talk Radio. I'm your host, Nurse Kimberly Overton. Wherever you're listening from today and whatever you're doing, I thank you for giving me the gift of your time. Be sure to make AmericaOutloud.news your daily stop for all the latest news and happenings. We all must do our part and share the stories, the articles, the podcasts, and videos so we can help secure America's future. If you're just joining us, I have been talking with marketing communication strategist, musician, and citizen activist, Donna DeSopo. Donna, thanks again for joining me.
Well, thank you. It's really an honor to be on your podcast and an honor to speak with you too, because I have the utmost respect for you as well.
Thank you.
Because what you've done has been the most difficult. It takes a lot of bravery to be a citizen activist. You will sometimes stand alone. You will sometimes, when nobody's looking, and at night, you will cry yourself to sleep at times because you know the truth. And, it is a very a difficult thing. And a lot of times I'll say, when you're speaking and you're at a podium and having to articulate, and you only get 5 minutes in citizens' comments, I would ask God to just, measure my words. And because I come from a different environment, we're quite direct up north.
Right. Yeah. I'm Bostonian. You're from New Jersey. And somehow we both found ourselves down south.
There's no time. We cut to the chase. We just say exactly, no filter. And so, sometimes I can get you into trouble, and your passion can be so, especially, I'm Italian and Irish. So the passion and, empathy. And to me, I have a heart for, people that are not being heard, those who may not know where to go, how to do. And I've had to do that in different areas in different counties too. And very quickly, I will say right now, we're up against a pretty difficult potential of an eminent domain, first time in history in Hendersonville, wrongfully. And what's ironic is that there are more people that got off the couch, per se. And I think Deborah Holmes is, if my memory serves me, she suffered through the eminent domain at the county level. And that got her the impetus for her to run and be a voice in her community. And she is now a sitting county commissioner. So as you start to peel away the onion and things start to try to get rammed through very quickly, it's like, wait a minute, there's something going on. And the something going on is that there are two people who do not want to give up their property because these elected officials, Ward 6 alderman and the mayor, the current mayor, they want a roundabout. Government created the problem with the high density and the traffic. And then all of a sudden it's this roundabout. Yeah, roundabouts are, quote, sexier looking than traditional traffic lights. And the first thing I had asked was, where is the traffic study? Again, evidence, the evidence and the reasons to believe why I must have a roundabout. It's the only solution to the problem. What's the problem anyway? You're going to examine what the problem is. It could be a speeding problem, may not just be a congestion problem. So that's why you have to have a traffic study. It's going to be probably 42 pages long, give information and intelligence, that you're going to have even have a reason to believe. Step one was not done. Step two is if it is a roundabout, it's the only solution and a long-term solution, which I hate to say it, in the state of New Jersey, we got rid of all the roundabouts because people don't know how to do roundabouts. And there were a lot of accidents. So now they have what they call jug handles instead. But when you're starting to find that step one wasn't done as a reason to believe, the RTBs to say, hey, landowners, we need this because we can't build it without taking this land. And your land is part of that. And now you have two people say no, but you still forge ahead. That to me is hugely problematic. You have no traffic study. You don't pass that, go. You can't collect $200 like if you're playing Monopoly, right? So you've got the one step that wasn't done. And then step two, if you don't have buy-in, then you should go to the alternate, available remedy to a problem. And so now you're seeing this, and thankfully, my hats off to WKRN, I believe it was, that aired it. And so now there's, in fact, Tuesday nights and whatever I can in the 5 minutes I have, I will be instructing the elected officials on both the county commissioners and the BOMA do not do anything until you do it right. Do the proper protocols, which is vis-a-vis your traffic study, and also you're getting the ability to, in writing and in agreement, that if all these landowners say yes, it's their property rights. They have a right to say no. So you can't just already have your lined up lawyers to say we're going to come in under the guise of eminent domain because we have our heart set on a roundabout based on nothing. And then even the ranking wasn't even based on anything, but some done internally. Now, I love the staff that works at these city levels. They are only doing they're doing their jobs. They're doing what they're instructed to do by who? The leader of the city. So everything squarely lies with the leader of the city, that you cannot be doing these things because it is wrong and it's tyrannical in nature. So
and that's the thing, Donna, when you say that, and you say it's tyrannical, as you were, describing this situation with the roundabout and all of this, it reminds me, there's so many parallels with the jab, and, not having the appropriate safety studies, but mandating this jab. Well, you just have to do it. And, so you didn't have a traffic study, or maybe like we could make so many parallels, like with the ivermectin, how they had to demonize that safe, affordable, effective medication, because if that existed, then they couldn't have the jab. And it's the same thing. It's just one more way to usurp power from the people and push whatever agenda.
Well, it's ironic too, because doctors also were able to prescribe off-label. I mean, they demonized hydrochloroquine, they demonized ivermectin, Nobel Prize winning medication, if my memory serves me, treats river blindness. Yep. They're also looking into, for cancer treatment. And I'm not sure, but I'd have to dig into it with regard to this. It has some kind of mechanism for promoting apoptosis. So, these cells don't die, and that's what you're having as a root problem. So this is a very cheap drug too. Pennies. So who are the winners and who are the losers? And when you are saying, I'm sorry, doctor, but you cannot prescribe these drugs off label. Well, since when? You're seeing the patient, you know what these things can be done, because let's face it, phase 1, 2, 3 trials are extremely expensive to do. And that's why they can do some things off label. You have, drugs with multiple indications. And, ironically, what's happened in bringing drugs to market quicker is orphan diseases. I'm going to do a sidebar thing. What's a strategy? And I believe it was one of the heads over at Novartis that had a strategy of, well, let's bring to market something that treats an orphan disease, because there's nothing to treat it. So health plans are going to have to approve something, because there's no real treatments available. So they'll start off with an orphan disease to get entry into market quicker. So there are different strategies of what you can do, again, and how would I do this workaround? And so we have to look over here. So you have strategists that are going to do things, but for anyone to say, I'm sorry, doctor, you can't prescribe this off label, you can't, and to demonize these 2 medications that have a history, ivermectin's got a long-standing history. And so if my memory serves me, I think they're starting to evaluate the ivermectin even in cancer treatments too. So some things are eye-openers in the healthcare system, and how it's fracturing, in my opinion, are some of the deliverables I was doing. I was expecting, and sadly, I had to walk my sister's cancer journey. Never thought in my lifetime I'd ever have to do something like that. But I was a lead writer for Alimta. It treats advanced non-small cell lung cancer, and you had to have non-squamous histology for you to be an appropriate candidate. And then a little bit more than a decade later, my sister was diagnosed with lung cancer. And we were telling doctors, primary care doctors, if you have a patient that's a smoker, do a CT scan of the lungs. It's kind of like your baseline mammogram for breast cancer. And unfortunately for my sister, her primary care doctor never did that. He was in her care for, well over a decade. And it wasn't until she switched to her other primary care doctor and she was having some issues, the first thing he said was, we want to do a CT scan of the lungs. But the health plan said, no, we've got to have an x-ray first. And she had a 6.4 centimeter tumor in her lung. And to me, that was devastating because I understood the disease and she was potentially a surgical candidate, but it had metastasized. I didn't know a lot about radiation, and then she had to take radiation, and there's something called proton radiation therapy. It's much more targeted rather than killing healthy tissue around the tumor. And it was really difficult in a time of COVID, even how she was treated when she had a blood clot. She languished in a hallway as a cancer patient. And that to me, I mean, some of the things that I saw were so void of the things that I thought was happening through our communications and that were not. And to be able to give patients, look, this may be an out-of-pocket expenditure if you want to go this way. This may not be covered by your health plan, but there should be information that should be disseminated so that you can make the decision. I'm willing to pay out of pocket for this newer type of radiation treatment and not this older type of radiation, which is not as safe as newer. You know, you have technology that advances. Why are we not telling patients everything? I learned that a little too late. And because my forte was the pharmaceutical end of things, not, and so you have to really be your own best advocate. You have to have an advocate with you. You cannot do it alone as a patient. And you have to really take such control of your healthcare and engage with your doctors. I was giving my sister's oncologist reams of information about ivermectin. I wanted her to take ivermectin. But, and then when I was trying to go to more of a holistic combination, pharma and holistic doctor here in Franklin, sadly, my sister had passed. So it was just heartbreaking. And then it's difficult because you feel like I should know everything, and you don't know everything. You only know some things because that's not your expertise. So the learning is always going to be research, ask the questions. Are these the only treatment available to me for what I have? And unfortunately, with the whole, I'll circle back to what happened with COVID. You first in marketing and advertising have those very, slick advertising phrases that get embedded into your headspace because I have to move you in certain ways emotionally to do something. And as a writer, for me to hear like, do your part, stay 6 feet apart, take this because, you may kill grandma. I mean, the things that are being said, words matter. They hugely matter. Yep. And so how you're framing a narrative, how you're telling a story. If I am trying to move you to do something, void of any clinical intelligence, well, then there's fear. And what I learned from Kathy Jenkins, I loved her. Gosh, and when I was with Quantum Group and worked on the Claritin product, I love direct-to-consumer advertising. She had the belief of hope in advertising. I can move people only so far with fear, but I prefer to go through the hope because I can move you so much more in the hope of healing as opposed to the fear of taking this if you don't take this. And that was what was being driven, was a fear-based messaging rather than a hope-based messaging. And so it's also your constructs and your mind and healing, because mind, body, spirit, palliative care is taking care of mind, body, spirit. And really, in fact, it was interesting. There was a clinical study on palliative care that you could get like 3 months worth of life gains. And that didn't even make the news. Whereas you can have heavy chemicals that are in your body that can give you some life gains. And, you're really harming the patient with the side effect profile. But you have palliative care and you can get about 3 months of life. And why not? oh, well, the health plan is not going to pay for that. I mean, so it's these drivers of who is the driver in the healthcare schema. It used to be that the doctors were the key drivers, key decision makers and drivers, because they were writing the prescription. Well, your health plan is really a key driver, because if the health plan doesn't approve it, its out-of-pocket expenditures are too high. Your doctor may write it, but the patient may not fill the prescription. So it's very interesting how things had shifted over time, how doctors can lose their autonomy. You know, why don't they have sole practices? Well, about 60% of their profit margin is the admin costs with all the health plans, costs money to the doctor. If they're not getting reimbursed for buy and bill, how many oncologists couldn't stay open? You're going to have a very big oncologist shortage in the days to come, because they were not getting reimbursed expeditiously, you know, for buy and bill dynamics. And so they can't survive and thrive. Then they started going into group practices, and then not group practices. Well, now they're folding into hospitals and having PSA type agreements with hospitals. So what do you think it's going to look like then? If insurance companies are not paying things, insurance costs are so high. What my hope may be, because it's shared risk, you can eliminate a middleman of shared risk. And maybe you might come a time where you're going to have hospitals and doctors working together in a shared risk type of model. And then they can do more and would cost less because you've eliminated a middleman. That may come to pass. I don't know. I'm only looking at what I've learned over time and what could possibly be, but it's so expensive, and that people may not be getting the care they need because they can't afford it. And some doctors are actually doing a subscription plan. We're going to do wellness stuff. And that's great too, because now we're looking at you as the whole patient, like palliative care is mind, body, spirit, right? How can we, you know, treat the whole patient, looking at the whole patient rather than looking at you as a sole disease from doctor to doctor and from specialty to specialty. It's looking at the entire patient and treating them in that frame, personalization. And so hopefully those things will come to pass where we need to get it right rather than wrong. Can we get clean foods? What's the toxins in the food supply? You know, we're faced with those things too. So what's the root problems, and how do we fix them so we have a much healthier population, rather than, you know, it's too late and now we're going to treat you and you're not in the best of shape, you know? So I think I kind of strung a lot of things together, Kimberly. You know, so it's, you know, wellness, and what does that look like? So do they say he who controls healthcare rules the world?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, and that's why we have to shift the paradigm. We have to change the mindset. And I think we're working. There are some of us that are out here and that are doing just that. And, you know, hopefully people will continue to awaken from their long slumber. And, you know, everybody's been very conditioned to just accept chronic disease and illness in this country, and that the only answer to that is a pharmaceutical product. And that is not always the case. Yes, it does have its place, but there are so many things that we can do as far as lifestyle changes and things that we can do holistically. And that pharmaceutical should always be the last resort, always.
Right. Yeah, it should not be a first line
No.
conversation. And then maybe it is having your clinicians to have a greater intelligence of nutrition. How many hours are being dedicated to that? I don't really know. And maybe sometimes it's asking the right questions to say, well, hey, this is how we can go about having a healthier society, because there's side effects to all these drugs. And, you know, when I was working on Miacalcin nasal spray at the time, we learned that in the long-term care setting, there are many elderly patients that could be on 12 to 14 medications a day, and they may not even need to be on them. And so multiple meds becomes an issue as well. Quick thing that I learned too, which was sad, tardive dyskinesia is something I knew about, gosh, a long time ago, and all of a sudden it's become on the radar. But tardive dyskinesia, because we pitched for a product in the ad shop, we didn't get the business, but I had to, again, learn about it, be able to put some concepts together, and see if we can get awarded the business. But I knew about tardive dyskinesia, and tardive dyskinesia is purely caused by antipsychotics, SSRIs, antidepressants. And when you have more than 42 million people in America on antidepressants, which are sadly hard to get off of, then you have this long-term problem. It's not attractive to have uncontrollable hand movements, lip smacking, facial tics, when exercise can be a great turnabout for depression, sunlight, getting outdoors, working out, getting those endorphins. We're getting it wrong, and we're not getting it right. Sometimes it could be a short term, but to be on them for years, people suffer through different things in their lifetime. Their serotonin levels may be lower, but they can go to talk therapy. And once they're in a certain space, but to have people on them for many years, and now you've got add-ons because it stops working. Was it tachyphylaxis? They talked about, whether or not that's a true phenomenon. I'd have to do some research on that, but they talked about that when I was working on the antihistamines, that there's tachyphylaxis, it's not working, and the patient believes it's not working. So you have to, if it's depression, or then there's add-ons, and now there's more side effects. And so how can we
it's a vicious cycle that it just there's no end in sight to it. And until we put a stop to and just start saying no more, because they do put you on these medications with absolutely no plan to get you off of them. Yeah. Donna, unfortunately, I can't believe we're out of time already. It goes by so quickly. I'm going to have you back because there was so much more I wanted to delve into. We didn't even touch the RNC. So we're going to have to bring you back to talk about that.
Well, I love to talk with you, and absolutely. I cannot thank you enough for educating through your podcast. It's amazing. Thank you.
I appreciate you.
Thank you.
And that is all the time that we have for today, friends. But remember, we are here on the air 5 days a week, Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern, with a different nurse host daily. You can also catch the encore at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please be sure to tune in and listen to myself and my amazing sister nurses. As we walk you through all of these hot topics, we will empower you with information and education. We will advocate and we will stand in the gap for you, because we are nurses. And this is what we do. I'm your host, Nurse Kimberly Overton, and you can find me here every Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern. Until next time, be safe, be well, and God bless. Remember, we are in a war for truth. We are putting out a bounty on the real misinformation and exposing the purveyors of propaganda. No topic is off limits as we shine our lights and expose the darkness.